Hello, and welcome to the Orlando Museum of Art's Art Sandwiched In. I'm David Madison. I'm the Associate Curator of Education and Outreach at OMA. Before we begin today's lecture, I would like to just go over a few of the features in our Zoom webinar. The participant chat is the best place to share comments publicly with the group, but for questions for LaJuné, go ahead and use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your window. Again, to access that Q&A, it's at the bottom of your toolbar. And then at the end of today's lecture, LaJuné and I will discuss those. And I have the pleasure of welcoming our speaker. LaJuné McMillian is a new media artist and creative technologist, creating art that integrates performance, virtual reality, and physical computing to question our current forms of communication. LaJuné has had the opportunity to show and speak about their work at Pioneer Works, National Sawdust, Leaders in Software and Art, Creative Tech Week, and Art and Code's Weird Reality. LaJuné was previously the director of skating at Figure Skating in Harlem, where they integrated STEAM and figure skating to teach girls of color about movement and technology. They have continued their research on Blackness, movement, and technology during residencies at Eyebeam, Pioneer Works, Barbarian Group, and Barnard College. Again, thank you for participating in today's program, and a big virtual welcome to LaJuné McMillian.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you so much for having me, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And yeah, I'm LaJuné McMillian, and I am a new media artist. And essentially, I've been working in this field for about 7 years now. I started this work while I was a student at NYU Tandon. And I was just really, I actually first went there for engineering and switched my major, not necessarily knowing what digital media was. So I was just so excited to see that you could merge so many different mediums together. During this time, I started doing work across performance and motion capture technology, and installation and projection mapping. So from there, I decided that I just wanted to do this work and that I didn't necessarily want to do anything else. And I realized very quickly once I left school that my access to a lot of the different technologies that I was using was drastically different and very limited. And so it really challenged me to think about ways that I could regain access into this space, but then also how I could help other folks have access into this space as well. So yeah, in the past few years, access to a lot of these technologies, to motion capture data, to character-based models, and software to make animation yourself has skyrocketed. From Make Human to Miximo to Carnegie Mellon's motion capture database, the ability to make and finish polished projects has become easier for many. And while these resources are extremely helpful to create a range of projects, they lack tools that create diverse characters and movements unexplored by systems that center assumptions of neutrality. So essentially here, I was just really frustrated with the lack of diversity within a lot of the different databases that are currently used for motion capture and also for character-based models. The amount of work that you have to do, the extra work that you have to do to create these different worlds for yourself is hard. So what does it mean to sort of challenge that and push back against it? And so I came up with this idea called the Black Movement Library, which started as an online database of Black motion capture data and Black character-based models. I decided that I just wanted to basically start creating spaces and tools to create spaces for us to be able to make. However, what I realized, going in, was that I wasn't necessarily addressing all of the problems in this space, and that I needed to dig a bit deeper into a lot of the different problems that. In a lot of the different ways that we are already seen and already represented in space. And so, yeah, representation isn't enough, especially when we first need to understand like how our movements and our bodies are already represented in the media and in the tools that we use. I realized like very quickly that the problem wasn't only just necessarily us not being represented in these spaces, but how we were already represented and how those representations of us were basically like exploitive. Sometimes they were like diluted and erased versions of who we are and who we can be, like basically lacking our humanity like within a lot of these spaces. So what does it mean to sort of push back against that? And yeah, I think one of the things that I was really interested in is this evolution of digital blackface. And this is from We Need to Talk About Digital Blackface. And I'll just read this out. But if you've never heard of the term before, digital blackface is used to describe various types of minstrel performance that become available in cyberspace. Blackface minstrelsy is a theatrical tradition dating back to the early 19th century, in which performers blacken themselves up with costume and behaviors to act as Black caricatures. The performances put society's most racist sensibilities on display, and in turn fed them back to the audiences to intensify these feelings and disperse them across culture. Many of our most beloved entertainment genres owe at least part of themselves to the minstrel stage, including vaudeville, film, and cartoons. And while often associated with Jim Crow era racism, the tenets of minstrel performance remain alive today in television, movies, music, and in its most advanced iteration on the internet. And so I say all that to say, like, when I first started working on this project, these lawsuits came out against Fortnite for using dances from mainly Black creators without permission, compensation, or credit. And so the Millie Rock became the Swipe It, the Carlton became the Fresh, and then various other dances were changed in name, effectively erasing the origins of these dances. However, currently the lawsuits are on pause because the dances are not considered choreography under copyright law. And yeah, so like this lack of protection, this lack of care, this lack of honoring like where you get information from is seen like in these digital spheres. But there's a long history of that, right? It's not just like, you know, a new thing coming into like the motion capture space. But then also you can see it, you know, online with memes that mainly like non-Black folks like use of Black people to sort of get their point across. And then in its latest iteration on TikTok, where a lot of different white creators on the platform have stolen full dance routines from mainly Black creators on that same platform, and in turn get millions of more views and opportunities from that work and from stealing all of those different creations. And then on the flip side, you know, like this is an example in the background, the GIF of a current motion capture database, and it's called Miximo. And I think that it actually is a pretty good tool if you're interested in learning about motion capture and rigging characters for your projects. However, when you're looking for culturally specific movements in existing motion capture databases, you may find some, but are often met with dances and movements that don't reflect the search terms. So the dance movement in the back is actually named hip hop dancing, even though it's clearly not hip hop dancing. So like this like lack of, you know, care of like what the actual movements are. And also like, you know, there are various types of hip hop dancing. So, you know, this lack of this description of what movements mean is really problematic. Yeah, and also in the name of making it easy to use, these tools often omit valuable information from the user, including information about the motion capture actor who provided the movements, and important and historical and cultural information about the movements performed. So this is not necessarily something that is just, you know, centered on like, you know, Blackness and Black movement, but all of the movements like in this database are categorized in, I would say, a dehumanizing way. You know, a lot of these different databases, you know, they refer to the motion capture actors as subjects, and they don't necessarily give you any information on those people who are, performing these movements. And for me, as a Black artist, it's really important for me to know where my movements are coming from for my projects, and also, who those people are, where they did their movements, what is that movement process and journey that they've gone to sort of get to where they are today. And I know that that's very like process specific, but I feel like process is extremely important in this work. And so this is another example called FaceGen, and this is how I create a lot of different avatars that have that look like me and that look like the folks that I am using for my projects. And so what's really interesting about this software is that you can upload pictures of yourself, front facing and side facing pictures, and there's this like algorithm that recompiles your face, and it does a really great job doing that. However, you can see that things get super problematic with these uses, with the use of these sliders. And so at the bottom, you can see that there's a slider for African, East Asian, South Asian, and European. And it's pretty like ridiculous, honestly, because how can you take the various different ways that people can look in all of these different places in the world, these like large, vast places in the world, and dilute that to a slider? I want to know, like, I have questions about where they're getting this information from. Like, how do they know that this is what more South Asian looks like, or that this is what more European looks like? So you can see a lot of the different ways in which like the software developers were, thinking about what it means to be quote unquote different races or different, I guess like not even nationalities, but, trying to just like dilute all of this different information to something that just doesn't make sense. And then you can also see like how the software developers feel about, masculine and feminine features. So like at the top, you see like there's a slider for male and female. And whenever the avatar's skin actually becomes darker, the gender of the character becomes more quote unquote male. And then the same thing happens for female. So when the character's skin tone becomes lighter, they become more like feminine in characteristics. And so I find that also really interesting because you can see sort of like this really like mirror of like how society views folks and like our bodies and what it means to really be represented in this space. And that's why I really love working in this space, mainly because I'm able to really like form a really deep understandings of what it means to be in the world by like critiquing and working with these different technologies and tools. And so, I just say all that to say the common thread of these examples is this oversimplification of Black people, our stories, and our lives. And it's a network of systems that quantify and degrade our humanity in order to capitalize off of our existence and being. So how do we combat the exploitation, erasure, and dilution of Black culture and Black people? And what do cultural reparations look like? Like this is like a long, long history of, just like taking, exploiting, degrading, and what does it mean to sort of repair, start to really build in those reparations for what has been stolen. And I say all that to say that Black movement does not only represent our individual experiences, but it represents our collective memory, transcending space, time, and white supremacist and all oppressive social structures. It allows us to connect to each other, our ancestors, our deepest selves, and gives us space to communicate to our future. Black movement is a technology holding the stories of our existence across the diaspora. And our bodies and movements are more than data points and avatars. They hold our humanity. And it's time for digital spaces and all spaces and tools to reflect that. So yeah, so essentially, like I've come up with a lot of different like just questions. Mainly, that's pretty much like where I've been starting with like building this space. You know, what does it mean to ethically digitize Black movement, and how can it better serve and celebrate the community? How can we effectively challenge digital tools and landscapes that don't share these values and gain liberation in our collective future? And these are questions that I don't have like, you know, specific answers to, but like the journey that I've been going on has really like opened some doors and some enlightenment. Like I feel just like really grateful to be able to have the space and the time to even ask like all of these different questions. So yeah. Yeah. And then like, you know, I was just like reading a lot on like what it means to decolonize technology. What does it mean to, you know, hack these different digital tools? And this is from Decolonizing Artificial Intelligence. This is an article, and I'll just like read this out really quick, and then like we'll move on. But decolonization emphasizes self-ownership. For land and peoples and nations, it emphasizes the restoration of land and life to its original inheritors. Self-ownership, as Fanon says, is the precondition for the creation of new forms of life. To create new ways of living and being, we need self-ownership. For knowledge, decolonization emphasizes the restoration of self-confidence. We need self-confidence to create new thought and new ways of thinking. There are three views of decolonization that gives him a more concrete understanding. As a decentering of European knowledge, one can remove the colonial power back to England or to France, but their legacies of thinking, psychology, economics, and culture remain. Decolonization asks us to remove Europe or the West more generally as a point of reference. We should reject an imitation of the West in our scientific work. We should assert our own identities. We should recenter our knowledge on approaches that restore our global histories and problems and solutions. For Ngugi wa Thiong'o, that meant rejecting the English language as an unassailable medium of teaching and discourse. For we technologists, this could be a recentering of our motivations, not always on the problems of Silicon Valley, but on our own localities and questions and backgrounds. And then essentially like what I'm doing is taking this like idea of decolonizing technology and all this research that's been happening there, and I'm connecting it to various research done in performance theory and specifically in Black performance theory, which is like this field of research. And so in Black performance theory, this is like a book with like various different authors in chapters. But in one of them, Dr. Nadine George Graves defines diasporic spidering as the multi-directional process by which people of the African descent define their lives, the lifelong ontological gathering of information by going out into the world and coming back to the self. And she does this by drawing connections to the evolving folklore of Anansi, to how Google and other search engines use web crawlers to find and organize new information for their growing databases. So I put this here because I'm really interested in what it means to go out into the world and, you know, like learn and sort of experiment with all of these different technologies and tools and sort of see like what that means for me and what that means for my community, but also really doing that work of like this self-reflective process of like understanding who I am and what it means for me to sort of like reflect back, and also like this undoing of like all of this different this undoing of indoctrination that I grew up with into these different systems. Like, what does that look like? What does that process look like? And so yeah, so Black Movement Library is a library. So like it started out as a project, but I realized that project could be like this idea of a project could be limiting, but maybe a library could be more expansive and hold room for more types of information. But it's a library for activists, performers, and artists to create diverse extended reality projects, a space to research how and why we move, and an archive of our existence. And this library seeks to grow community through performances, extended reality experiences, workshops, conversations, and tool making. So yeah, so basically I sort of had like a flip in like what it means to be, I guess, a quote unquote tool maker. I realized that I needed to really focus on building a community first and try to understand like what it means to sort of cultivate spaces of care. And within those spaces of care, find homes for a lot of these different tools that we are building together collectively. And so I started off with a performance, and this is a performance that happened 2 years ago, but it's this narrative component to be seen as both a live performance and VR docuseries, showing how Black movement has been used as a tool for the preservation of Black culture, but also as a vehicle of self-evolution. And the first VR documentary includes Nala Duma and Ronaldo Maurice. And I transformed them into what I'm calling now movement portraits. And I wanted to show you just like a clip of that first. Okay. And yeah, I'll just show you this.
I produce, write, perform music. R&B, hip hop, pop music through an experimental electronic kind of lens. The root of my art, it's very Black, Black music, Black art. My whole family side. I was the only one born in the United States. They all speak Zulu. That's another thing I want to do before I die. I think I was 10 years old. 9 or 10 years. But my dad was like, sports, more active. I did soccer, joined soccer. It seemed like made more sense. I had done soccer before, and I liked it. And then the winter came. So I thought, why not try dance?
Yeah, and then I'll just like show you that for now, just for like time purposes. But yeah, I'll keep going. Oops. So yeah, for this work, I used a perception neuron, which is a type of motion capture suit. It's different from like a motion capture studio in that it's a standalone suit. And so it like allows for a lot of different like portable like access to these tools. And also like it doesn't require as much tech. And essentially in a live version, they both like sent their movements over what do you call? Over Wi-Fi to essentially like get translated into visuals in real time. And yeah. And then like the second project that I wanted to talk about real quick was something that I did most recently, and it's called Antidote. And essentially we were really like, I think like this has really shaped my new way of thinking about what it means to sort of like frame and like build spaces and frameworks for Black folks. And yeah, Antidote is an offering, a prayer, it's an interruption, a hacking, a portal, a medicine, a ritual response, and a physical undoing of the lie that we are not our own and that we are not free. And yeah, basically like over like a course of like 4 months, I was collaborating with another choreographer, and her name is Marguerite Hemmings, and we were doing a lot of different witnessing activities, finding ways to really connect over Zoom. And so you see here, Marguerite is actually wearing a motion capture suit, and this is from us doing different movement like over Zoom, using like using our different motion capture technologies. And then like we recorded all of these different movements and created this really long, but really beautiful piece, basically sort of celebrating us and our connection and the building of our connection over this space and time. And then we were also able to collaborate with an Afro-Indigenous activist whose name is Amber Starks, who's just this amazing person, as well as Salome Isega, who is a creative technologist, and Rina Anakwe, to really build, Rina Anakwe, who like built these like beautiful soundscapes for the piece. And then Amber and Salome created this like really gorgeous virtual land acknowledgement. And yeah, I think like that brings me to the workshop series, which is Understanding, Transforming, and Preserving Movement in Digital Spaces, which is a workshop to learn about extended reality tools in relationship to race, gender, and culture. So I actually ended up creating a package for BLIXEL, and it's based off of this, sort of allowing folks to use different like motion capture technologies tools, because we don't necessarily, like people don't like, or everyday people don't necessarily have like access to motion capture tools and motion capture technologies. I've done a lot of research recently on finding different technologies for motion capture online. And one of those tools is Deep Motion, which is really cool. And essentially it can take 2D videos of you, and it can essentially like allow you to take your movements from your video camera and like translate it using like algorithms into 3D motion capture and animations. And yeah, and then like in the workshop version, like where it's like live, we dive into frameworks that I've been investigating, researching, and developing by going out into the world. So like taking this like diasporic spidering approach by working with different digital technologies, understanding why they work and what they get wrong. But then we also like come back to the self by discovering and diving into our embodied technologies. And so I'm really asking students to enter this space with their whole selves, and that we spend time to witness each other. And also just asking like if like whether this intersection of different fields can help us unravel and understand how our humanity weaves through the recordings of our movements, the modelings of our bodies, and the 3D realizations of the worlds we wish to be in. And yeah, basically this like asking of hacking traditional ways in which we learn and engage with digital tools by embedding our whole selves into the process in which we produce. So the workshop depends on and centers process and what portals of connection can we discover together. And so, yeah, I've been really excited to sort of like transition this workshop experience into a package, like something that people don't necessarily need live, but something that people can sort of engage with, like information that people can engage with sort of like outside of a classroom, like by themselves. So yeah, I'm like just really excited to sort of have like this opportunity with BLIXEL to do that, to do like this work, but outside of, I guess, like the traditional like live ways that I've been doing it. And yeah, I think like one of the hold on, yeah. I think like I'll also like just transition into like this idea that I've been sort of just like diving into, like this idea of witnessing, what it means to be a witness. And yeah, this is from like an article from the New York Times with James Baldwin. And I'll just like read it, but like he was asked some questions about what it means to be a witness. And yeah, I'll just read them. You have been politically engaged, but you have never succumbed to the ideology which has devoured some of the best Black writers of my generation. And he responds, perhaps I did not succumb to the ideology, as you put it, because I have never seen myself as a spokesman. I am a witness. In the church in which I was raised, you were supposed to bear witness to the truth. Now later on, you wonder what in the world the truth is, but you do know what a lie is. And then what is the difference between a spokesman and a witness? A spokesman assumes that he is speaking for others. I never assumed that. I never assumed that I could. Fannie Lou Hamer, the Mississippi civil rights organizer, for example, could speak very eloquently for herself. And what I tried to do or to interpret and make clear was that what the Republic was doing to that woman, it was also doing to itself. No society can smash a social contract and be exempt from its consequences. And the consequences are chaos for everybody in society. So like what I really loved about like these two statements from James Baldwin was that what does it mean to really understand that, you know, you cannot capture like the essence of people, really, like anyone, really, right? Like that's just not something that is possible. And this idea of being this like spokesman, of being this person who is the spokesman, like the person who has to do this work, it sort of erases the actual work that needs to be done, which is taking a step back and actually witnessing. And for me, like it really has transformed like my life as an artist, mainly because I realized that I'm not speaking for community, but I am, you know, witnessing and learning and diving into various frameworks that, you know, I'm discovering along the way, to be able to, you know, really become a steward of a lot of these different spaces, and be a worker that really cares for and really honors and celebrates the work that's already been done. And yeah, I say that to say, you know, what does it mean to transition from motion capture to motion witnessing? I think that a lot of these different digital technologies that we use today, they're made in this effort to capture us, to, you know, to have us, to own us. And what does it mean to sort of break that connection and transition it more into a witnessing activity for these digital technologies and for our relationships with these tools to be more of a witnessing, to be more of a working with, rather than just a one way like communication that, you know, then takes our like information and data to sort of like capitalize off of us, and further, you know, commodify our bodies. And yeah, I think like from there, I've been doing a lot of different conversations with different Black folks. And I guess that like also leads me to, you know, my like work with like Kenya Robinson in BLIXEL, like, you know, just having like a lot of these different like various conversations with folks who are like thinking in the same way and doing this similar work. And yeah, I'm really thankful to be in community like with a lot of different people who are not necessarily quote unquote capturing us, but are finding ways to witness us in ways that are important, especially like in these different digital spheres. And I love to see it. So like, I love to see it. I love to, you know, collaborate. And yeah, I'm just like really grateful and thankful. And I would say that in general, like this is really a movement that celebrates our history, our culture, that serves our community, and helps us to learn and grow as society evolves. And it's a movement that holds us accountable in the ways we deal with Black people, our movements, our bodies, and our lives. Thanks.
Thank you, LaJuné. That was fascinating. I am just blown away by the scope of your work. So for everybody who's watching, we met as a result of Kenya's project, and you participated in a panel discussion that was just really engaging about this notion of decolonizing museum spaces, but also photo libraries and the way the Black body is represented within the stock images, right? Which is what Kenya is kind of investigating with that particular project. I just have a few questions for you. We can just have a bit of a dialogue, and then if anyone has questions who's watching right now, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. You can ask a question for LaJuné and we'll address that. So I just wanted to have a clarifying I have a clarifying question about the structure of the Black Movement Library. So I think it's interesting you've transitioned from the term project, and you brought this up, from project to library. And so in thinking through the connotation behind a library, it's borrowing, and people can take these ideas and remix them. And so is the end goal, or the future goal for this, to have like a repository of digital objects that people can license out?
Yeah, so like
Okay.
that was very much the goal in the beginning, but then I realized that like through various conversations with like people, I realized that the home for something like that didn't exist. So like institutions like normally like don't exist in that way. And I like realized like very early on that if I was going to like sort of leave this repository, right, like this like database, right, with someone, who would it be? So I have to focus on, you know, what it means to build an institution that can accurately care and honor and celebrate like that database, and sort of make, I guess, like a quote unquote sort of like, I guess, just like a space that doesn't necessarily like, or I guess like won't perpetuate systems of harm, you know, that won't perpetuate a lot of the different ways in which like we have to, you know, commodify ourselves to live and survive, right? So what does it mean to build an institution that goes against that? And those are like a lot of the different questions and a lot of the research that I have. So yeah, but yeah, in the end, like I really do want like people to be able to use it, but I want to set up a system that allows them to use it in a way that respects the data that's collected really fully. So it just like added a whole bunch of time to like the work, but I'm here for it. So
no, those are quite huge questions of ethics and values, right, in terms of what happens to these digital objects in their lives and their evolution. So I think that's a big research question for you as this project evolves. I am also interested in, again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to chime in the chat, or sorry, in the Q&A feature. So in thinking through like education, so of course I'm an educator here at the museum, and so I'm constantly kind of thinking about who are we engaging within this space, and how are we undoing this notion of the museum as an exclusive space, and kind of democratizing ourselves through educational programming in this institution. And so I'm also thinking about mentorship and the role of education in your kind of development, or these informal mentors, formal mentors, people who have kind of helped you develop this incredible idea, this incredible focus. Do you have like those individuals in your life? I know we talked a lot about collaborating.
Ken is one of them.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So like definitely, you know, like yeah, like we've had a lot of different conversations, and that's been really great for me. Like honestly, like when I first like brought the project to her and spoke with her about it, like she told me to dream bigger, and I was just like, oh, like that means that this can be like way bigger than I had ever really imagined. And like when you think about like dreaming big and what it means to like actually have like a wider like scope of what a space can be, like it really forces you to and challenges you to you know, ask these questions, you know. Like I think when I first started, I was very much, you know, leaning on having products, and like, you know, I was really just focused on the product, but like really like diving into like the process and what it means to ask questions, and to realize that, you know, this act of, you know, undoing yourself, right? Like undoing like all of these like this need to like produce and make like right, like undoing that work, like it takes a while to be able to do, and to understand that actually just like sitting with a lot of the work, you know, that process and honoring that process, taking the time that it needs to is important. So like Kenya's been so helpful with that. On like the dance side, like I've been working with a lot of different like dance educators. And I also, so I didn't mention this like earlier, but it was mentioned in my bio, but I have a background in figure skating. And so I was like coaching for a while, and then I realized that space is super heavy with like indoctrination into whiteness as a whole. And so I don't know, like just leaving the skating community for me, like I didn't think I was gonna ever skate again. Like I thought that I was going to just like quit and like never like do anything with it, because I was like, I felt like it was evil. But like but then I found this skating community called Brown Body. And Brown Body is this like really, really beautiful skating company for African American skaters, for us to do that work of undoing that indoctrination like within us. So they've been so helpful in my reconnection to my ancestors. So we do a lot of different ancestral work and performing in collaboration with our ancestors. And for our ancestors, but also like what it means to sort of bring our full selves to the ice, and what it means to really be able to like be in spaces that aren't necessarily built with us in mind, but being able to thrive and live in those spaces, and what it means, and ask those questions and do that together collaboratively. But then also like perform. So Brown Body has been so expansive for me. Deneen Richburg and Leela Aisha, they have been just like so helpful. And then, then I have like at Barnard, Gabri Krista, like she's been so transformational for me. Like, you know, she's like that one person where I'll be saying something, or I'll be thinking in some way, and she'll just like call me right out on it. And I'll be like, oh, you know, like, people. Yeah. So, you know, I get gathered, like, you know, and also just like to say all that, you know, like my ancestors, like 100%. Have been guiding me through this experience. And I feel like they have been collaborating with me on this experience. I learned what I need to learn as I learn it. And just seeing the amount of blessings that have just like manifested all around me and in my life, you know, I attribute that to, you know, really like diving deep and listening and tuning an ear into you know, the path that they have, you know, laid out for me. So yeah, a lot of different mentorship and learnings. Yeah.
Wonderful. We do have a comment. This is from Coralie here at the museum. She's our associate curator. More of a comment than a question, but it was a great reminder to see how decolonizing doesn't stop at best practices, but are also necessary in new practices and the technologies of tomorrow. Things that haven't been created yet have already been colonized. Indoctrination, indeed. Very reminder.
Yeah, and you know, and that's why I say, like, you know, the work is really, you know, it's not just me building something, but it's really me like doing the self work that's needed, doing the like inner work, and you know, sharing in that with other people across like various communities. And understanding that that work takes time, you know, like, yeah, like you're not just going to become like, like, you know, like, it doesn't just happen tomorrow. So
no, it does. It takes a lot of research, and it takes a lot of community. I think that's the beauty of your process, is it's so collaborative. You have so many people who contribute in some way, right? In terms of the dancer. I was really interested in the audio that you played as well. I'm not
sure. Yeah, I forgot to tell. So essentially what I did in that process was I did interviews with both Nala and Ronaldo, and I was learning about their movement journeys and movement practices. And we created soundscapes. So that soundscape was actually created by Nala because he's a music producer. But we also like embedded different snippets from the interview, so that when the audience comes to see the piece, they're learning about the mover, and not just seeing them like dance, but they're like diving into like their movement journey and movement practice too. So Yeah, it's sort of like this like recorded history, sort of like documentary, or I guess like I call them like abstract documentary, where it's like you're learning about this like evolution of a person through their movement, but also through their story. So yeah, like that's and it's helped me so much like with my work and my practice to sort of learn about them and to sort of just like build visuals off of that. Like I feel like through like that connection and through that just like learned process of like trying to learn about someone and who they are.
Absolutely. So I know this is somewhat of a cliche question at this point, but I think it is important for you at least, the pandemic and how that has affected or changed, because you are so collaborative, but so much of the self work that you're talking about does kind of occur alone and in our kind of own silos, or at least for me it has. So I'm wondering if that's the same for you, or if this pandemic has affected the way you view technology and embodiment in new ways.
Yeah, honestly, it opened so like it's okay. Like first of all, like it's terrible that this is happening, right? Like
Right.
I just have to say that first. But for me personally, it opened so many doors in so many different ways, like that I view things. Like for
Mhm.
antidote, when I was connecting to Marguerite like over Zoom, what I realized was that the way that I was connecting to people before the pandemic wasn't necessarily real. Like I felt like I was making some connections, but I wasn't really connecting to people. Like I was like running around the city, running around New York, like trying to get shit done.
Mhm.
Sorry, cursing, but like I was trying to get things done and like trying to like live my life. And from there, I just like wasn't focusing on the connections that I was making. Everything was very like calculated and and it was just like it was a mess. So to be able to sit down and connect with Marguerite over Zoom, what we really challenged ourselves to do was to open a new portal to connect to each other like in a different on a different plane of existence. So we were going we were like basically spending time apart, like doing different like spiritual work, doing different like prayer work, and generating like these ideas, right? And then we would come together, share the ideas with each other, and then like create this visual experience around that. So
Wow.
so we were like also when we were moving, we were like bringing in like our spirit guides, our ancestors into the space so that they could also help us forge that connection as well.
Hmm.
And I learned that like true connection, to truly connect to someone, you don't necessarily have to be in the same space as them, but you can access like different ways to really like build that space for each other or discover that space for each other. Because I feel like we both felt like this space that we cultivated was a space that our ancestors had laid out for us, and they had brought us together to pretty much meet into this space.
Hmm.
So I don't think I would have been able to do that type of work like if I wasn't far away from someone. And then just like bringing in all the extra collaborators who
Sure.
placed their work into that piece, like, and just seeing them like blossom, like it just all seemed like it was made to be. And like that project really told me that collaboration and this type of collaborative work has no boundaries. There are no boundaries. There's no bounds. Like if you just have to like put in the work, and that embodied work, that embodiment practice. Like when you dig deeper into that, you can really open a new way of connecting to someone that's not necessarily just like over a digital technology, but that's all around you. Like I felt just like so filled with like, and so just like fulfilled in that work. So
Wow. Well, it sounds like a year of self-discovery, of just general discovery, but fantastic. I thank you, LaJuné. This has been absolutely wonderful. Doesn't look like we have any other questions, but if people do want to reach out to you, is there a best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so I mean, like, I guess like I'll just like share my Instagram on the
Cool.
chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I put like all of my like stuff there.
Great. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for today. I am so excited to see the future of the Restock Image collection that you're working on with Kenya. And of course, that is in partnership with the museum. And we are, it's a part of our ongoing exhibition, Voices in Conversation, selections from the permanent collection. So thank you so very much for spending time with us, for sharing your wisdom with our community.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Okay.
All right,
Bye.
bye.